Whatever cloak of invincibility Sergey Kovalev used to wear was at the very least dirtied by Andre Ward in their two fights together. It was officially ripped to bits against Eleider-Alvarez, the man known as Storm, the Columbian, earlier this year, when he registered a 7th round stoppage over the Krusher, flooring him 3 times in 1 round, which brought about an automatic stoppage to the contest. The rematch has been set for the 2nd of February next year in Texas, I believe. And for me, it's going to be the most interesting crossroad, or pretty much last chance saloon, for the Russian. Now, I know that from about 2013 to 2016-17, when people got sick of it and realised it just wasn't going to happen, that it was really about the prospect of Kovalev against Adonis Stevenson. Stevenson had the WBC, Kovalev had the WBO, and I think swept up the WBA. And we wanted to see those two guys who were clearly at the top of the division come together. And we eventually got bored and realised it wasn't going to happen. That was that. And then, of course, there was the associated hype with that, with both of them, but even more so with Kovalev, because he was generally perceived as the best of the division during that time period. But often with a lot of hype, it has a lot of the fog and it has a lot of the mystique that doesn't really get at the reality or the true substance of a fighter. We hadn't really seen Kovalev in a tough fight. We saw him scratch his head a little bit and have a tough one against Chilemba, and that preceded the Ward fights, which, whatever you think about Ward or you dislike him, he at least showed, at the very least, the flaws that are inherent in Kovalev the fighter. Now, Kovalev-Alvarez rematch, it's an interesting one. It's the fact that he wants to fight him next says to me that he is willing to take up this challenge, and he is willing to really dig in and do everything he possibly can at this stage of his career to make it happen. He's 35 now. He's got a lot more miles on the clock than Alvarez has, who's 34 as well. Not exactly young, but a lot fresher. Very big, very thick, powerfully built, light heavyweight with a bigger reach as well, who will be going into this rematch with the mental edge. He has got some serious advantages. I've heard Jean Pascal, of course, who lost twice to Kovalev. He already reckons that it's game over already. Alvarez is going to win. Now, Kovalev, of course, after the losses to Ward, he had something of a spiritual rebirth. He went away, he tried to reconcile, because there was a bitter aftertaste to them. I think he was pointing fingers too much and not acknowledging his own flaws in those fights, low blows or not. And he was finding it hard to reconcile that emotion. He came back and he did win the WBO title, which he originally ripped away from Nathan Cleverley back over in these shores in 2013. And then he quickly got beat by Alvarez. So, but in that loss, of course, I think it underlined inherent problems in his character, possibly, you could even say, certainly in his style and his fitness, of course. Stamina problems, clearly. Doesn't really know how to fight on the inside. Well, got bullied on the inside. No real mid-range either. He likes to be in control, Kovalev. He's a guy who's used to being in control. Boxer puncher, keeps you at the end of his punches, gets you away. If he's having to work, he starts to breathe heavy. There are gaps in the guard, and no boxer who gets in the ring, certainly in the world level, is a wuss of any kind. But sometimes you question the resolve of him, or just his reserves to make things happen when things aren't going his way. He's got with Buddy McGirt now, apparently. But what was it? While some reckon that John David Jackson, who previously was with him, was a little bit bitter, he did have some interesting things to say about how apparently Kovalev was drinking before the first Ward fight, with vodka and stuff like that. Very bad training habits, and not listening to advice in the camp. Those are big problems. If he's pig-headed in the camp, if he's headstrong, that's a problem. I'm not sure McGirt can get him to change that much at this point, being 35, but I do at least expect a more conservative, being careful of that stamina, not trying to blow his load too much, and being assertive at the same time. If you can't fight on the inside or at the mid-range against a guy like Alvarez does and roughed him up, then just try and lock him down with a clinch. That's your best bet. Klitschko style. That's what I think he should try and do. But ultimately, momentum, I kind of have to agree with what Pascal was saying. A bigger reach, physically stronger, bigger, all the momentum. I think Alvarez is going to go in there with all the belief. He's going to take shots off Kovalev, which is what he did in that first fight, and his power's not going to be any different. I think he's going to rough him up. He's going to go to the body, which is another weak point of Kovalev, as John David Jackson said as well before the Ward fight. The body is a weak point. He's going to go to that. He's going to make him work. He's going to make him feel sorry for himself. It may be a bit trickier. It might even go to points. But ultimately, I think the Colombian is going to register a second win over the Russian. And Kovalev will officially say goodbye to the boxing world, certainly as a world-class force.